Arizona football needs some help on the defense, although it's pretty good. Will there be some reinforcements on the way?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for giving it a Locked On Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. This show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, we have talked a ton about the University of Arizona offense this year, or this offseason, and rightfully so. It should be one of the better offenses in the entire country. There is really no excuse for it not to be one of the better offenses in the entire country. But now we are going to talk about the defense. Now, one thing that made Arizona's defense so good last year was its ability to be able to rotate in and out players. And even though there might not have been a super high profile, first round superstar, there was a lot of different dudes. Just look at the defensive line. You had Taylor Upshaw, just at the ends. You had Taylor Upshaw, you had Isaiah Ward, you had Deuce Davis. You had throughout the line, you had BBN, Big Bill Norton, Tyler Manoa, Tia Savea, Tai Uiagalelei, just a variety of players and players that could play, players that were difference makers. And that's what I think part of the genius of last year's defense is that it kept everybody it kept everybody fresh, kept everybody going. That's something that you obviously like seeing. But Arizona has lost certainly some of that depth. Actually, most of that depth. So you've already lost, obviously, you've lost all three of the defensive ends in Isaiah Ward, Russell Davis, and Taylor Upshaw. And then you lost Tia Savela, Tyler Manoa, BBN. So you got to be able to refresh that unit. Now, I think there could possibly be some reinforcements on the way. That's just pure speculation. Have actually no insight on that, but certainly some things that make a little bit of sense. But let's talk about what Arizona has right now. And at the ends, you're probably looking at a starting duo of you've got Trey Smith from San Jose State. Trey Smith's very, very good. 6'5", 265 pounds. That was a very, very good get by Brent Brennan in the previous coaching the coaching staff. Kid that's out of Mesa originally. You got to figure that you can plug and play him. He's also probably going to be a high round draft pick. And by high round, I mean he'll probably be, when he does go, he'll probably be a top 100 type player. He puts together a good stats. He's got a great frame. Now, you always have the question, how will you be able to move on to the next level as far as, going from a San Jose State to an Arizona? But sometimes, some players, they just look a little bit different. They just feel a little bit different. I think this is a situation where that is probably the case. Trey Smith, I think, is plug and play. And for as long as he's here, you got to figure that Arizona is going to feel pretty good about him and what he can do for the Wildcats. So again, I don't know that Isaiah Ward or Deuce Davis would have been better than Trey Smith. As a matter of fact, I'm guessing that Trey Smith's probably as good as those guys, if not better. And so Arizona, I think, is okay there. Then at the other defensive end position, you're probably looking at Ty. Now, again, I like Ty a great deal. The thing about Ty that has always been impressive for me is that he is just kind of a relentless motor guy. And Arizona got him. It was another very, very good eval by the coaching staff, but Arizona got him, and he's been able to play inside. He's been able to play outside, and he's been very effective in both roles. He's very much of a player that just kind of goes, and you can kind of put him in anywhere. And he's a bigger dude. He's strong. He's strong, and not only that, he's pretty well put together. He is he's somebody that Arizona, I think, is very, very happy that they were able to keep around. And honestly, they should be happy that they kept him around because he is a very good football player. And again, he's just somebody that kind of fits in everywhere that you want as a coaching staff. And so those are probably your two defensive ends. Now, again, things can all change. You need to remember that obviously the transfer portal is a total equalizer when it comes to everything. So if another player were to come out or whatever the case may be, do not shoot the messenger. But I think those two are probably going to be your defensive ends. And honestly, I'm all right with that. It's maybe it could be a little bit more dynamic, sure. But I think these are both clearly starting caliber players in the Big 12. And, Dwayne Aquina, I got a lot of respect, a lot of faith in what Dwayne Aquina is going to be able to do from a coaching staff perspective. So I would look at that and I would say, okay, probably good to go there. Now, on the inside, that's where it gets interesting because Arizona has definitely lost some depth. Losing BBN was, some people don't think it's necessarily a big deal. I think losing BBN, pardon the pun, is a big deal because he was one of those players that you can't necessarily just look at his stats. The Arizona run defense was significantly better when BBN was out there. And he was just kind of a difference maker across the board. I think it's a loss. Now, some people I know Scheer doesn't think it's necessarily that big of a loss. I think Scheer's wrong on this one, but I guess time will tell. What I liked, though, too, about the depth was you were also able to keep Tai Uiagalelei inside when you needed to, and again, that is obviously that some of that depth is gone. But we need to talk about some of the players that are returning. Isaiah Johnson has wowed the new coaching staff. Isaiah Johnson's an interesting player, too. I would ask about him throughout the last couple of years. Kid out of Chandler, really, really well put together. He's also kind of an immovable force. And this new Arizona coaching staff really likes him, and they like him a great deal. And honestly, it's kind of easy to see why. You watch him, and he's he can just move. He can move, but he can also stay there. It's kind of like a mobile fire hydrant. But at one of the D tackle positions, he is going to play, and he's going to be playing a lot. He was rotated in and out with BBN, so there's certainly that. Then you've also got somebody like Kevon Darden. Now you might say, who is this? Out of Syracuse. He was one of the better defensive tackles in the entire ACC last year. You've got to figure that he's going to be one of the starters. Pretty good numbers, too. 5 sacks, tackles for loss, had some tackles as well. Obviously following Dino Babers to Arizona. I would be stunned if he is not one of your starting defensive linemen. And honestly, you should. You don't come from an ACC school where you put up those kind of numbers and you're like, nah, I'm good. I'm totally cool being a backup. I don't think that that's going to be the case at all. And not only that, I don't think that that is going to be the case for Arizona. You bring him in with the expectation that he is going to play. And I think Arizona's hoping that he can have a really big year. And I think that there's every reason to believe that that can be the case. Now, we are going to get to possible guys that one that entered the portal and one that's got a little bit of a connection with the coaching staff. But first, Monopoly Go! Monopoly Go! Everybody grew up playing Monopoly at some point, and it is fun. There's a reason that everybody played Monopoly. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store, on App Store and Google Play. Monopoly Go! Now, the great thing about this is that it's also virtual in that you can do it with a lot of different people, and it is fun, and you can continue to build on it. Again, it's just taken over. People are utilizing it. Everybody likes Monopoly Go. Try it out for free on the App Store or Google Play. Then also something that everybody is utilizing is eBay Motors. eBay Motors, check it out. All right, here's the deal. If you're like me and you know nothing about cars, you're probably tired of getting fleeced now and then by, overpriced parts. And you're like, man, I could just get this and then give it to somebody I trust. That is why eBay Motors is here. Millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. Again, All kinds of good stuff at eBay Motors. Millions of parts for your MVP win every time with parts that fit your ride. And more importantly, cut out the middleman. eBay Motors is here to help you make or save money. You've worked hard for it. These are tough economic times, and let eBay Motors help you as well. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. We are talking Arizona football and the defense. Now, we're going to talk about the Toya brothers. One is at San Jose State still. He obviously played for Brent Brennan last year. He is he's very good. He was an all-conference performer. If Arizona were to get him, you would probably plug him in next to, and by the way, Chubba May. We need to talk about Chubba May here. He has been absolutely, he is a immovable object. So that's kind of your little troika there with Arizona returning players. Obviously, May wasn't here, but he has been huge, and you're hoping that he can just basically be BBN. But you look at some of the other options there, getting back to the Toya brothers, they're both monsters. One's at San Jose State. He was an all-conference guy. I think if you're Arizona, you'd love to get him in there, and he would immediately hop into that rotation. And then you're also looking at one from UCLA that just entered the transfer portal. Now, again, the San Jose State one hasn't entered the transfer portal. We're just speculating. UCLA guy, though, he's probably going to be able to go anywhere he wants, and he's going to be expensive. So I don't know exactly what the case is going to be, but if his brother enters the transfer portal, then all of a sudden it becomes maybe a little bit interesting, and we see where Arizona is. But at the tackle position with Isaiah Johnson, Chubba May, and Kevon Darden, Arizona should be okay. I am okay with that defensive line. Now, let's talk then about the linebacker. Jacob Manu, an All-American linebacker, one of the better linebackers in the entire country. One thing, like I said, I've got to give the previous coaching staff, they were very, very good at evaluating talent, and Jacob Manu is squarely up there. He is a heat-seeking missile on the football field. And he gets downhill quickly, and he is just I think a lot of people were wondering, would he be able to, in that second year, would he be there in that second year, and would he be able to make everything happen? And in that second year, he was able to make tackles closer to the line of scrimmage, and he was able to get downhill. He had a lot of sacks, tackles for loss. Jacob Manu is the man. He has incredible football instincts, and he also has just kind of that leadership type vibe, that quiet leadership that everybody gravitates towards. Jacob Manu is going to leave here as one of the best linebackers in school history. He is a tackle machine, and that was obviously a very, very good recruiting eval by the previous staff. Now, lining up next to him, I think for the longest time, people were assuming it would be Leviticus Sua, very highly rated kid out of California, the Trinity League MVP, but it is going to be Tay Brown. Tay Brown out of Phoenix has been very, very impressive and has very much impressed this new coaching staff. Tay Brown is about 6'2", 220. And he moves really well, and he plays with a little bit of a fire, a little bit of a burning desire that's also very appealing. And he and Jacob Manu have really hit this one off. So that's kind of where it's at. Both those dudes are going to play a ton. Now, Leviticus Sewell is getting a little bit of run, but it's going to be a lot of Tay Brown, and it's going to be a lot of, obviously, Jacob Manu. I'm not breaking any news to you on Jacob Manu, but that's kind of where the linebacking core is at this point. And we're kind of at the stage now with the defensive backs, the secondary. So you got three safeties that are going to play a ton. I almost included Genesis Smith in the linebackers because he's going to be able to play closer to the line of scrimmage a lot. I love Genesis Smith. Not only do I love Genesis Smith, he's just, he's around the ball. You can play him by the line. You could also play him in coverage. He's able to get a lot of different, he's able to make a lot of different plays. And he's an NFL guy. We've talked about him quite a bit. And Arizona is very, very lucky to have him. He's going to be in that rotation next to Gunnar Maldonado. Got to give Gunnar a lot of credit. My bad, Gunnar. I thought Gunnar sucked last year until about midway through the season. Then all of a sudden, Gunnar became very, very good. And Gunnar Maldonado is a problem. Gunnar Maldonado is a player that he can really hit. And we saw that in the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma, where he was he was the defensive MVP. He got better as the season went on, and just overall became a real backbone, a real stalwart of that defense, of that defensive secondary. Then next to him, obviously, you've got Dalton Johnson. Dalton Johnson is probably the best combination of all the safeties at this stage. He is very, very good, and when he's out there on the field, you just feel pretty comfortable with him. The previous coaching staff, I still don't quite understand what took him so long to play Dalton Johnson, because Christian Young was terrible, but Dalton Johnson was able to, once he was put in there, he was really, really good. Those are your safeties. And those are three really, 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 really good safeties and guys that have all conference potential. I think if you're looking at the strength of the defense, you're probably looking at that safety trio, and you're like, all right, those dudes, that's kind of where it's at. And that is where it's at with those three. They're all very, very good. Then now let's talk about the secondary then. Obviously, Ephesians Prysock moved on. I don't harbor any ill will towards somebody that moved on, but Ephesians Prysock was a weasel when he left. Trying to sell his jersey, and then when as he was going to Washington, tried to sell his jersey, his Arizona jersey, and then saying he doesn't make any money off of it, and he just wanted people to remember him. No. You do make money off of that. You are fibbing. But the quarterbacks, though, obviously, Tacario Davis, if you can hold on to Tacario Davis, he's obviously a huge part of what Arizona wants to do. And not only that, he's one of the better defensive backs in the entire country. If he could catch the ball, he would have probably been a first-team All-American, because he's always around the ball, and he is able to use that length and use some of that speed to be able to catch up. He's been a very good hold, knock on wood, for this Arizona coaching staff, and you certainly hope that can continue. But I don't think that there's any reason to believe that that won't. But it's not over until it's over. He's still obviously in the transfer portal, and he could change that mind at any point. Then you've got, well, you know what? Let's read Gametime, then we'll get to one of Dwayne Aquina's favorite players, and that would be but let's first talk about Gametime. All right, let's say that you're going to Gametime and you're saying to yourself, man, I want to go to a pretty cool rock event. Gametime's got you covered. Gametime is your one-stop shop. We've been talking about this. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. $20 off your first purchase. And again, this could be for sporting events. This could be for music events, any kind of entertainment. Gametime has you covered. Now, download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we're talking about the secondary. We just talked about how good Tacario Davis is. Duh. But now we are going to talk about another player, Trayden Stukes, one of the best nickel backs in the entire country. And he is just really, really good. He is good in coverage. He's also good near the line of scrimmage. You talk about a jack of all trades type defensive back. That is Trayden Stukes, and that is Trayden Stukes to a T. He's just a very, very good football player for the University of Arizona. And Dwayne Aquina loves him. And he should love him. He's one of the better players on the team, and he's one of the better players in his position in the country. So there's that. You got to be able to find out, and I would imagine the portal will be this. You got to find another DB, because obviously you lost some DBs that were really good. Ephesians Prysock, very good. Shaw, who left, looks like he's going to be a monster as well. So you got to find somebody else. I'm all right with G7, but I would prefer G7 not necessarily start because, again, I don't know that he's necessarily good enough. Arizona last year had a lot of defensive backs that were more than good enough to start, and you got to try to replenish that. But if you replenish that, I think that you're in pretty good shape. Overall, the hallmark of this defense, I think, is pretty good. Not only is it pretty good, I think that Arizona can probably get by with where it's at, but you need to add some depth. Again, you need to add a couple more defensive linemen, and you got to get some more corners in there. I'm not breaking any news. That's just kind of the where it's at. Now, as far as the special teams go, I am excited to have Fam Rayshon Speedy Luke in that Rayshon Speedy Luke can do a number of different things for Arizona. He's going to be able to return kicks, and he will be able to return kicks. He'll also be able to just hopefully not just fair catch it every time. I like Jacob Cowing, but Jacob Cowing, it got kind of old after a while just watching somebody fair catch everything. I do not understand why they did that, but they did that. And so Cowing is I would like to see Speedy Luke used more in a variety of different ways, and I think that they are going to use him. So again, I would like to see it, and I realize in college football that the kick returner is kind of going out of style. I get all of that. I do not care if it is still a position out there and you have somebody that is really fast. Go ahead and utilize them because that's why they are still there. That's why you recruit them. You don't recruit a kick returner and say, we're not going to use you. Although maybe you're super honest if you do say that. But the special teams I'm excited about. Punter, kicker, cool as well. And Arizona, I think, should be in pretty good shape. So again, we've talked a ton about the offense. We know where the offense is. But defensively, that's where this team is going to make a lot of its bones, I think. And I think you've got a invigorated Dwayne Aquina as your defensive coordinator, which I obviously love having Dwayne Aquina there. And I think the template of the defense is actually pretty good. Now, you need to add some depth, no doubt about it. But overall feel pretty good about it, and because there's a lot of real playmakers back there. Now, granted, Arizona lost a lot of players, but there's a lot of playmakers back there as well. So we'll obviously keep a close eye on that. It's going to be fun to watch. We expect all of you out at the spring game, so you'll check that one out as well. All right, now, we're going to be off here for a couple days, but then we are going to come back and we'll hopefully have some new Arizona football news, and we'll get right back into Arizona basketball. We're also going to talk some Arizona women's basketball as well, because there is a lot of things to get to when it comes to that. But again, this should be a pretty good team. I'm just going to keep beating that point into the ground. This should be a pretty good team because Brett Brennan's got a lot of offense, and you've got the making of a pretty good defense as well. So we will see exactly how that all plays out. But on that note, though, wanted to break down the defense, the D-line, the linebackers, the secondary, the special teams. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. But as always, though, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. Arizona's done a really good job of holding off a lot of people for some of these highly contested for players, and so far, so good. But on that note, I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back of the A. Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day.